The WLTP rated range of the Audi Q6 e-tron Quattro is a massive 615 kilometers, but the WLTP test is done on a rolling road in a lab with an average speed of less than 50 kilometers an hour. On this channel and in this test, we do real-world motorway range testing at much higher speeds. With a speed of 120 kph or 75 miles an hour, the Audi Q6 e-tron and other cars we test aren't getting close to their WLTP rated ranges. So in this video, we're gonna find out how far or how close the Q6 e-tron Quattro can get to that 615 kilometers claimed range. The Zaptec GO is a stylish, award-winning home charger. Just look how great it looks in these different lightings. I use one myself, and for more information, check the link down below. I'm now back in the Audi Q6 e-tron, and this time a Q6 e-tron Quattro. So the last time I had one of these cars on loan, it was the SQ6 e-tron, and though that is a car I like a lot, I think it is very good, it is also very expensive. So I think this Q6 e-tron Quattro hopefully is going to be a lot more popular amongst the viewers out there, because this is a more relevant and befitting electric car for those families looking for an SUV that is a little bit luxurious also and practical. Because besides, you know, not having the performance as the SQ6 e-tron, and this specific car not having as much equipment, like this doesn't have the adaptive air suspension, this doesn't have the upgraded Bang & Olufsen sound system, it also has this beautiful fabric interior with these sports seats, which I actually do like, instead of the upgraded Nappa leather. There's also no panoramic sunroof, and maybe other stuff that I'm missing. Essentially, it is pretty much the same driving experience or very close. I'm really impressed that this much more base Q6 e-tron is still very good to drive. My only, well, it's not even a complaint because it's still very good, but I recently drove the Polestar 4 last week, made a whole bunch of videos on that car, and that car is surprisingly quiet when it comes to tire and wind noise. This car, wind noise is pretty good, but there's a lot more tire wear in this than I remember, and a lot more than in its bigger brother, the Q8 e-tron. But when it comes to the driving experience, especially the adaptive safety systems like the adaptive cruise control in this is what Audi do the best. I mean, everything just works flawlessly out of the box. If you saw my videos with the Polestar 4, I had a lot of issues with that car, and yeah, that's an unfinished product in many ways. This car is so polished and refined, and everything just works. It's pretty perfect in that way, and also the Audi ergonomics. So I'm gonna get back to that in my review probably later this or next week, because you guys know I love how Audis lay out their cabins. The mixture between physical buttons and also the infotainment system is almost perfect and flawless. It is really great. But this car is really nice to drive. So what this car has, which I haven't driven, is the sports suspension. So no adaptive dampers, just fixed, you know, dampers and springs, but it's actually really nicely set up. It feels very Germanic and polished. Like, there is very little body motion, but still there is enough suppleness in the suspension to make it still very, very comfortable. It is actually an impressive car. So today's conditions, it is 13 degrees Celsius outside, so a lot colder than last week. Like Friday last week, we had like 30 degrees Celsius, so the weather's just pretty crazy now that we're, you know, nearing the fall. But we have dry roads and also cloudy skies, so the conditions are still very good. The only thing is that it is a bit windy today, so according to the wind map, though it looks pretty calm here, we do have a push in the northward direction, which is the direction we are headed, of 4 to 7 meters per second. So that may be good for the consumption this way, but yeah, we may have higher consumption on our way back. So after about 20 minutes on the road, our average consumption is 20.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, but I'm guessing we're not going to have that once we get back to our starting point. And if we have that, that is pretty darn impressive, but we'll have to see later on in the video. Maybe it's because the sound system in the Polestar 4 I drove last week, which had the bass sound system, was so crap and terrible. Like the system didn't sound good, and also like it didn't go any loud. This bass sound system here is so much better. Maybe because the contrast just really highlights the difference, but this is actually pretty decent. Like hopping from that car into this is, I actually don't need to upgrade. Like if I were to buy this car, I probably would, because you know I love listening to music. But yeah, most people I don't think actually have to upgrade to the Bang & Olufsen in this car. So we're now at our halfway point, at our turnaround point, and I'm gonna grab the camera for you guys so you can see the actual consumption, which is actually pretty decent. Yeah, look at that, guys. 19.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That is actually pretty low. So we'll see if, you know, we're gonna have that on our way back, because as I said, according to the wind map, we do have a you know, headwind on our way back of about 4 to 7 meters per second. But I mean, it doesn't look too bad. But yeah, I'm not going to be that optimistic that I think we're going to have 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers of average consumption on this trip, because if we do, that is actually super impressive for being this type of vehicle. But it remains to be seen. So I'm going to see you guys. For me, it's going to be about an hour, but for you, it's just going to be fade to black and fade back. We are now back exiting where we started this test a few hours ago. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to go and connect to one of these 350 kilowatt Ionity chargers, and then we're going to see what speed we now get just driving the car on the motorway, passive heating of the battery. So no preconditioning. This car does have preconditioning, not manually but automatic. When you use the built-in navigation system and the car chooses a charger, it will precondition the battery to the optimal temperature according to the percentage and where you're going. We don't do that in this range test. This range test is all about getting that maximum efficiency and then seeing how far we can go on a full charge of battery. In a different test called the long trip test I do here on the channel, which I am going to do with this car, I'm probably going to film it tomorrow and then it's going to post a few days after this. I use the built-in route planner and then we precondition the car. So I do both types of tests to see what performance we get out of the battery, just ambient temperature, no preconditioning, and also with preconditioning. So we're gonna go to one of these chargers, and now there's only one that is occupied, which is actually really nice. And the charge port is here on the driver's side. And as predicted, guys, the consumption of this car has risen. It has risen more than I was hoping, but not as bad as I was scared of. So we're gonna stop here, put the car into park, and then you can see that our average consumption now after is 22.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Yeah, it is really windy outside. So the charge port here on the Q6 e-tron is here on the driver's side, the DC fast charging port. And why doesn't one open all the way? That was a little bit strange. There is an AC charging port on the other side. And yeah, as I said, really windy, and these cables not made to go, not made to do this one-handed because of the twist of the cable. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, like this, rather. So we've now connected to the charger here, and this car should peak at 270 kilowatts. That is the peak charging speed. I've gotten more than that, maybe like close to 282, 283, but at a lower state of charge. We're currently at 39% state of charge, so we're not gonna get that peak charging speed. And also the ambient temperature outside between 12 and 14 degrees Celsius. So the battery, I'm guessing, maybe is not at more than like 20, 22 degrees Celsius after driving. So yeah, this car does take a little bit of time to initialize. As you guys can see here, we're still not charging, even though we are connected. That's gonna take a little bit of time. There we go. So this is gonna be interesting to see what speed we're now gonna get. It seems to stop at 134 kilowatts. So that is basically because the battery isn't up to temperature. I'm pretty sure even at 39% state of charge, we would have gotten like 200, 220 if the battery was up to temperature. So that's nice to, to know. If you go to a charger, even after a few hours on the road, you're not gonna get that high of a charging speed. You have to use the built-in navigation system so the car can precondition the battery automatically when a charger is put into the route. Now let's take a look at the results. So if we take the usable battery capacity of this Audi Q6 e-tron Quattro, which is 94.9 kilowatt hours, we divide it by the consumption, 22.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and then we subtract 3% for discharging and heat losses. That gives us a theoretical range under today's conditions of 407 kilometers, which is a little bit better than the SQ6 e-tron I tested a few months ago, but that car was on bigger wheels, and also that car has more performance. But I've spoken to the engineers who are responsible for the drivetrain and, this car in general, different engineers, on multiple occasions. I went to the technical presentation of this car in Munich earlier this year, and also went to the launch later and spoke to the same engineers. And they told me and us who went to that event that the electric motors, the drivetrain, the battery pack, the inverters, the electric motors, everything is the same in this and the SQ6 e-tron. The only difference is the power they take out of the drivetrain, but they assured us that it's basically the same. So getting the same results or close to the same results is to be expected. So with that being said, I was hoping to get more range, especially halfway through this test where we had pretty low consumption. It was windy, and the much higher consumption than at our halfway point, like 3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers higher almost, is testament to the weather we had today. So, the results are decent, but also this car doesn't have as big of a battery as its bigger brother, the Q8 e-tron, which means in the real world, even though that car has higher consumption, they're going to get pretty much the same range, which is a little bit disappointing considering that this is a brand new platform, and also the fact that you can basically get a Q8 e-tron for the same price as this out of the door at an Audi dealer. And also when we look at this compared to the Polestar 4, which is a new car but built on an older platform that is built on the SEA platform at Geely Group, and is basically a reskinned Zeekr 001. It is a little bit, disappointing that this car and this platform isn't able to get better consumption than that car, because in my last range test of that car, granted that car was, a rear wheel drive version, I'm pretty sure that the all wheel drive version of that car won't get much worse consumption than this. Both cars have about the same drag coefficient of 0.27, and that car is a lot cheaper and has almost the same size battery, like 0.9 kilowatt hours smaller. So yes, it's a great car. Consumption is decent. Battery pack is pretty big, but I was hoping closer to 450 kilometers, because that's what I'm hoping to get out of the Polestar 3 I will be testing in a few weeks. Just crossing my fingers that we have similar conditions so the results can be comparable to the other cars I've tested recently. So guys, tell me what you think about the results of this Audi Q6 e-tron Quattro. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.